saying, well, George, why don't you just use that plywood for your door? It'd be pretty simple. Well, if you look at this piece of plywood, you'll understand exactly why I'm not using it. It's delaminating. It was a piece of junk plywood, and it came as a packing sheet with some other lumber that I had bought a while back. But it did the job for last night, blocked our hole up. So now the next thing we're going to do is I want to cut a piece of wood for a door jamb across the bottom. That will go right across here. And that will need to be 28.5. So I'm going to go grab a piece of wood out of the shop, and I'll cut it to that length, and we'll put that in, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we have our part that we cut to the length. To brush off the dirt a little bit. Not that it's never going to have dirt and sawdust on it again, but might as well start off. And I have rounded the edges a little bit just with my sander before I brought it in here, so that when I go across it with my knees, it won't dig into my knees, you know what I'm saying? I need it to be flush on both sides with my door jambs here. This is not my go-to, countersink, but that's all I got at the moment. And it'll do the job, keep it from splitting. Using Torx head screws. See that? Okay, so now we have that all screwed down. And our next thing is to figure out how we're going to build our door. We're going to build our door in place rather than building it and setting in place. We're going to build it in place. Let me show you what I mean. Now, the first thing you got to realize is that we have a reveal across the top. That's going to act as our door jamb or our door stop. The same thing down the edges here, and now with our new door stop at the bottom. So we have a door stop all the way around. And the idea is that we're going to be able to make our door flush with our side. Now when I put these side pieces on, I caulked inside of here and I caulked inside here. So this is all sealed off all the way around with silicone. And once we get the door made, this piece of rigid insulation will go on the inside. And that'll help to keep it cooler. There's no insulation in the basement of my house, not on the floors or anywhere else. So this is only going to make this so it's not just a big open hole, you know what I'm saying? So the first thing we got to do is take a measurement across the top. I know it's not parallel exactly. The top is 28 7/8 and the bottom is 29 5/8. So that's 3/4 of an inch difference, and that's because that's the way the opening was when we got done cutting it out. That's not a problem. We're just going to make the door so it fits the opening, and it will get hinged. And I believe, I'm thinking about it, I think I'm going to hinge it on the left, and or will I hinge it on the right? Maybe I should hinge it on the right, because if I'm going to have my hose hanging over on the right, which I probably will, I could swing the door back against it and not fight with it trying to get the door open. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put the hinges on the right, one at the top, one at the bottom. So the first thing we want to do is do a rough cut on our top piece, which I said is 28 7/8, and I want to make it a whole 1/4 of an inch less. So I'm going to actually give myself a little bit extra. I'm going to make it 28 1/2 for my top piece. So let me cut that, and I'll show you what we got for our first piece. Okay, so now what I have done is I have cut my first piece, and I have cut it longer than what it needs to be. And I set it up against the top here, and I check over here tight against the top so that we make sure we're going to be parallel, and I have a pretty good match up over here. That's on my left. Now I come over here to the right, and I made it a little bit long, but look, I could probably push it in there on the bottom, but it's probably hanging over at the top by a good 1/8 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow for that 1/8 of an inch there on the top and go back 1/4 and then measure in 1/4 on the bottom, and that will be my cut. That will give me an 1/8 of an inch on either side and match the angle. Now I've marked it 3/8 in here and 1/4 in here, because we knew this was an 1/8 too long up there. Then I will run my line down through there, and that's the angle I will be cutting it at to make it fit. That'll give me an 1/8 of an inch clearance on both sides. Now you can see the angle. Let me cut it, and we'll put it in place and tack it in place. I'll show you how we're going to do that. Okay, this isn't finished work, so the chips are okay. Now let's go see how it fits. It's nice and square there, up tight against the top, and I'll slide it over so I have an 1/8 of an inch space there, and then I'm going to slide it down so I have an 1/8 of an inch space there, and I'll show you how we're going to make that work. These are 4-penny galvanized common nails. I'm just going to stick one right there. I'm going to stick one on the other side, which you can't see me doing it. And I'm going to stick one on each side at the top and make sure it's square into the building, as my siding actually hangs down. Now if I put this up in here, I have to kind of slide it up in. See that? My nails give me proper space all the way around. Now I'm going to do the same thing again. This time I'm going to put one of these nails right in the middle at the top. Just like that. And that'll hold my piece in place. Now the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hinge on there. Hold on to your hat. Okay, so these are the hinges I'm going to use. One at the top, one at the bottom. And I'm going to space them approximately in the middle of my board. And I'm going to use the same screws that I'm going to be putting the door together with here. If I can do this left-handed while I hold the hinge in place. It's not rocket science. I'm not left-handed. Now I'm just eyeballing my hinge to make sure it's square with everything. I'm not really happy with the head on these screws. That kicked that over too much. If you don't have shaky hands, it sure helps a lot. Oh. I'm doing this by eyeball. I'm going to show you another trick when we get to put the bottom one on. It'll help with getting that lined up. So the hinges will be straight. It's important that they be straight up and down so that they don't bind. Now, I'm only going to put 2 screws in here for now because I still want to have some adjustment left, and my screws are actually sticking through on the back side, which is what I want because my next boards are going to go vertically, but we got to put our bottom piece in first. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to repeat the same process on the bottom. Now you watch, I'm going to pull my nails out here. Again, that was an extra short one. And so is this one here. Okay, so I've got some end cutters. Now I can just pull that out like that. And I can pull this one here out, and that one wasn't hardly holding anything. But there you see, this is essentially my door. Okay. Now I'm putting this board piece of wood, which is a 1/2 inch thick, down on the bottom for a spacer to keep the bottom of my door up off the sill. And this piece I cut is almost a perfect fit. I'm making sure it's down on my spacer piece. Okay. Now, I have to cut my board here so that I have an 1/8 of an inch space on either side. And I'm going to set it on here so I know that my sill is pretty much level, and I need to have 1/4 of an inch from the edge of my frame. So I'm going to measure over 1/4 of an inch like that. I got 1/4 of an inch top and bottom, even though my piece of wood is not square. Well, it's not square. I know it's not square. It's got to be cut out of square, so now I've marked it. I'll cut it, bring it back, and we'll put the screws to it. Anchor that one in with a hinge. Okay, so now I put one screw on the point of this bottom hinge. The top one we have anchored more or less, but we can readjust it if we have to. Now what we're going to do is we have this straight edge. All it is a scrap piece left over from a cutoff. And you can see that at the top, if I can get my camera to work here, it's kind of unhandy trying to do this by yourself. You can see that it's sitting pretty well even here. So we come down to the bottom, all the way down, and because I have this one loose, I can move this one up and down. It's open at the bottom, so I'm going to slide it up and look at that. Now it's nice and tight. So now I can screw this one in knowing that it's going to be perfectly parallel with my upper screw. Now I am going to do another thing that will make it a little bit easier for me and for you, if I can remember what I did with my piece. Yeah, this is a self-centering drill bit. Now watch, I'm going to put it right here, and it makes it perfectly in the center of that hole, lines it up, so when I take my screw and put it in, it's pre-drilled, just like that. Now I can do the same for all of my other holes. You'll notice I'm changing the screws that I'm using. These are Phillips, but the reason I'm changing them over is because the head matches the hole on my hinges a whole lot better. My other screws that have the Torx heads on them that I'm going to be using for the door itself, their head is a little bit bigger, so it doesn't line up quite as well. This has self-centering, so that when you push it in, the drill comes out through the center of the hole, and this cone on the end fits perfectly inside of the hinge. Okay, so now you hear it scraping on the other side. That's because, if I can find my nippers, I have a nail over on the other side holding my space. Just pop that out. And we haven't finished anchoring that hinge in, so it hasn't held it in place. And the reason I'm not anchoring this back in here is because essentially I'm going to have to take these screws out that are in the hinge now so that I can run it through into my boards that are in the back. So we'll leave them in like that, and I'm keeping my spacer here to hold my bottom piece where it has to be. Now I'm going to start putting in vertical pieces in between, and I'm going to start on the other side over here, get this side anchored together, and then I'll work my way across. Hold on to your hats. Okay, so you're going to have a spacer under your door, which is right here, and then you're going to have a spacer on top of your door stop that will space your door panel up off of the bottom, so that when you close it and when you're putting your pieces in place, you can hold your door panel up where it belongs. And yeah, and don't make the mistake I just did. I didn't put a big enough space on the side here between this panel and the door casing, door jamb, and I had to take it off and redo it. So let me get my spacer back inside here. Okay, so we have my spacer under the bottom here. I have the spacer underneath inside, and I have opened this gap up to at least a quarter, and now I have the gap I need, and I can continue on across with my progress. So it's not wide enough for the full pie piece, so I'm going to cut it down. I'm going to make it 5 1/8. I'm going to make it 5 inches. We'll put that piece in, and then we're going to put a piece in here, another piece over the top over here to close up our space around the edges. And then I'm going to put an angle piece across that will help to keep it square and not allow it to sag. It's going to be pretty hard for it to sag anyway with all of these screws. But okay, you know what? I'm not even going to bother with the cross piece. This thing is so stiff with all of these screws and stuff in here. I think we're just going to put our hasp on here like that and be done with it. Well, there she is, all done. And that probably won't stay there. I have a pallet up here. Excuse me. Going to do it again. I'm probably going to put a piece of plywood or something on top of that. Put that down there so it'll get me up pretty close to level. So then when we come in here, I put down a couple of scrap pieces of 2x8 and that piece of plywood that we had on the outside, to put that on top of that, and I got like 3 or 4 layers of foam flooring that I had taken out of the wood, out of the Goofy garage. So that's that for nice landing. And when I get back in here, I'm going to do some cleaning up in here, a little raking. And you can see up top there where I was telling you about. Let's see if I can get my light to stay in place for me. There. You can see up in there, that's the hole that I had opened up to come down through for doing the plumbing that I had to do. A lot of what you can see overhead, a lot of that white stuff is all stuff that I have done since I have been here. Most of that had to do with my water filtration system to get the gas out of it. So yeah, I have a little bit more stuff to do and a little cleaning up in here, and then I can come down and do some work in earnest. And it gives you an idea of where things are. I don't know if you could see way down there, you could see the duct work for the AC unit, and that goes all the way up to the front of the house. And so, and there is a jog over in there that goes further forward than what we can see from here. So this is a great advantage and a great help to me to be able to come in here and get right at my plumbing and not have to crawl around the whole house to get here, which is a big advantage for an old man like me. So until next time, this is George, the Shade Tree Fix-It Man, saying, you know, if I can do it, you can do it too. And yeah, we have been working in the shade today. It's coming down toward the end of the day now. Let me get up. And as you always know, there was somebody calling me when I'm making a video. Sun is going down. Lights are on in the outside of the Goofy garage and inside too. So until next time, this is George, the Shade Tree Fix-It Man, saying thanks for watching, commenting, subscribing, thumbs up, sharing, all them good things. Fall is beginning here. Look at them leaves. Oh no. Thanks for watching. Bye now. Oh, I'm a Shade Tree Fix-It Man. I don't need any helping hand. I'm the jack of all trades when I'm working in the shade. I'm a Shade Tree Fix-It Man.